Hello, and welcome to another episode of Paranormal in Hell, a place where people of Newfoundland and Labrador can share their paranormal experiences that happened here and anywhere else in the world. Today, I have in the line with me Dan, and he's going to share some experiences that he's had with some local hospitals. Hi, Dan. Thanks for coming on the show today.
Hey there, thank you. It's my pleasure. So I have three stories, two from a hospital and one from a building downtown that I'll leave unnamed just in case. So first and foremost, I've been doing security with various companies for almost 13 years now. Fortunately, I haven't seen much, but there was one hospital in particular which made the night shift absolutely terrifying to work with. I remember exclusively I was working on a unit where it was locked down, patients couldn't come and go. And at the time, I was watching on the cameras a room that was definitely empty next to a door that led to a unit that held only offices. And while I was sitting there, remembering this is about 2:30, 3 o'clock in the morning, and I watched we'll call it a lab coat. He walked out of a closed door and into a patient's room. Again, that room was empty, and I looked at the nurses, they didn't see anything, so I started to take a walk down, and as I got up to go down, the lab coat and a shadowy figure, it's the only way I can describe it, walked back out of the room and back through the locked door to the offices on the other unit.
Through the locked door.
Yeah.
Ooh, that must have been spooky at 3 o'clock in the morning.
It was definitely something. And now I saw it first, and the nurses saw me looking at me, like, what is he looking at? Why does he look so confused? I told them what I saw through the bubble, the little office they have there on the unit, and, they started keeping an eye on the camera. Now, the unit itself is shaped like a horseshoe, so I could see the door where again, we'll call him a doctor, was coming and going, and I could see the cameras at the same time. So now, I couldn't see much, anything really, looking down the hallway, but at the exact same time on the camera, I saw this lab coat walk out of the room a second time and through the door, and that was the last time I saw him. So I was talking to the nurses, and they said, first off, doctors don't wear lab coats anymore. That's been gone for quite some number of years. And there was no explanation for why anybody at 3 o'clock in the morning would have been going into an empty room without coming through the main door. So we had no clue what to make of it. But now, again, everybody saw it on the camera. My partner, the three nurses working the overnight shift, and myself. But looking down that hallway, there was nothing to see. I went down and checked it out. The back door was locked. The room was empty. So I really have no explanation. But it looked, aside from a shadowy figure, you could see quite clearly it was a lab coat of sorts, and that's what it looked like. But it was coming and going in ways that physical objects should not have been able to move. So
that must have been a very perplexing night for you as a security guard. I'm sure you probably wanted to make sure the place was secure and that it wasn't somebody walking around, or maybe it was the doctor doing rounds. But like you said, they don't wear lab coats at that facility for a while.
No, exactly. And the only way to get onto the unit was from the front door, which is directly in front of us, to which it's double locked, so you need two keys to go through two doors. There shouldn't have been anybody else up there, certainly not going through another locked door that doesn't ever get opened, ever.
That's an interesting story.
No, it's, so there was that. I mean, I don't know what to make of that. But, further on, after I left that particular unit, I took a promotion of sorts, and I started working the entire hospital, and one of my big jobs was to hit all of the units in the run of the night that were empty, make sure that the nurses, the doctors, the patients themselves were okay. But the main unit they really wanted us to check was a dialysis unit. Now, to get into that unit, you needed a key or a swipe card. I can't remember which, but the doors didn't just open. You had to open them yourself. And it would be nothing to see that door open 3 or 4 times a night with nobody there. Further to that, one night when I did check it, going through myself, of course, there was somebody standing behind me. looked completely corporeal. It was a person, could see their outfit, their clothes, their face. And, when I opened the door, it slid open, but as I went through and turned around, there was no one behind me. Now, there were other guards who'd seen the same thing, so we always figured it was the same. I don't want to use the word specter, but it was the same apparition, and we all seen him as we went through that door. It was just a reflection behind us, but you couldn't see anything else. And once the doors opened and closed, and you could see the reflection again, there was nobody there. That was really quite a common occurrence. Like, that happened quite frequently. I have two other stories, one of which is the last one in the hospital. In addition to going around and, checking the units, day shift or night shift, we covered all the units, whoever was patrolling. And I can remember one that was on the third floor. It was actually completely empty, vacated, because they were renovating the whole unit to add more space for a secondary unit. And the only thing held on this unit were, old beds, old tables, trays, generic stuff that just doesn't need to be used right now. And I remember walking past one of them, and this was in the middle of the day. I'd say about 2, 3, maybe around 4 or 5 dinner time. It was like 10 years ago. But I remember walking past the door, and it was like somebody said right behind my ear, "I need out. Help me." Now, this wasn't a whisper. This was as if somebody was talking to me right behind me, and I wasn't paying attention. Turned around, of course, shocker, there's nobody there. And the room that I just passed, which is, I figured, the only place it could have come from, was an empty room, which was originally an office, but was currently holding 2 beds, 3 trays, and we just called it a crash kit. It was like an empty kit for emergency supplies or response items that you needed, medicine or what have you. Obviously, there was nobody in that room and nobody on that unit. But I've never been able to shake that ever since walking through that, somebody wasn't able to leave. And, just to reiterate, it sounded like a very clear, firm voice behind me. "Help me. I need out."
So from us ghost people, that would be what we call a class A voice phenomenon, where you could clearly hear it. And
That's
it
terrifying.
sounded like you had a full-on apparition. A lot of experiences.
Yeah, now to put that in perspective, like I said, I've been working security for almost 13 years now. I can't count the number of buildings I've worked at. I can't count the number of sites I've been to or the people I've worked with. But there's only ever been 2 buildings in 13 years that I've seen anything, and only one of them have I seen this much, and that was the local hospital. So, my last story... sorry, go ahead.
Before you go on to the next story on that one, when those experiences happened, did you notice anything different in the atmosphere? Was there any thunderstorms outside? Were there different temperature changes? Did you feel anything different?
Other than extreme fear when I heard the voice behind me, I can't say much. I mean, again, this was years ago, and I do remember it was in the summer, and it was in the day, so there wasn't any weather, nothing that could have, tipped that off. But I can definitely say I felt cold. But now, whether that was like my stomach sinking because, I'm alone on a unit where nobody else is supposed to be and somebody's talking to me, or if that was an actual change in the atmosphere, I couldn't tell you. Definitely colder, and I was definitely terrified. But whether those are hand in hand, I don't know.
There's some really interesting stories.
Well, hopefully my last one will, this is my favorite. I use that word very loosely, mind you. And it's definitely the most scary thing I have ever seen. So there was a building downtown on the east end, we'll say behind the Sheridan. Again, I don't want to say exactly which building, but I was doing an overnight there. And it was only about 11:30. I even had a friend of mine come up to just have coffee in the main office because he was out and around. We were having a chat. And in the office, I'm looking at the cameras. And, I should specify, too, before this shift started, I was told that there was only one other person whose name was Rose. She was supposed to be working in the delivery bay because we had a late order coming in that the offices needed to have picked up for the morning. So there was only supposed to be 2 of us there, 3 plus the person I had a coffee with. While I was watching these cameras, in the basement of this building is where they held all the offices and the machine room, while the upper floors had conference rooms, VIP lounges, that kind of thing. Anyways, there was somebody walking around in the basement, and when they had absolutely no business being down there. So I watched her for a couple of seconds, and I took my notes and I made an observation of what she was wearing, and I remember it quite clearly. She had long black hair down to like the middle of her back. She had jeans on, black flats, and a brown turtleneck shirt. And I said you couldn't see through her. She seemed like she was just running back and forth in a hectic through the offices. So I went down, took the elevator down to go see, if she was okay, if she needed help or anything else. And I saw her walking away from me down one of the hallways to where we have the electrical room, the machine room, and the extra supply cabinets. So as I followed her, she turned right around this corner, directly into the machine room, which shouldn't have been possible because the only way to open that door was with the master key, which was left with the security guard who was on shift that night. Now, again, it wasn't late, but I figured maybe I was burnt out. So maybe I'm just seeing things or I'm hallucinating, what have you. As I opened it up, I checked out the engine room. I walked in, looked behind all the machines. There was nobody there. So I came back out and thought nothing of it until she was sprinting. I don't want to say running. I mean, she wasn't walking. It was fairly quick, going down the opposite hallway towards the offices on the other side of the basement. So I called out to her. I tried to catch up with her, and this door opened as she went in, and I followed her. Except all the lights were off and all the computers were off. There was nobody in there. At this point, I thought, I'm being played with. Somebody's playing a joke, and I'm not doing this. So I went down to the loading bay, and I asked Rose. I said, "Listen, there's this woman. Follow description. I've seen her several times now, and I can't get to talk to her. Have you seen her, or do you know if there's anybody else here?" And this lady, God love her, she starts laughing at me. And I said, this isn't funny. I can get in a lot of trouble for this. And I said, no, you're not going to get in trouble. There is nobody here, and you didn't see anybody, technically. So she said, just follow me for a second. I went into a break room, which was around the corner from the loading bay. And on the wall in there was an employee of the company who had been killed several years ago in a car accident just outside the building. And I couldn't make this up. The woman who I've been chasing, with the brown shirt, the long black hair, and she was the one in the photo, and she was killed in a car accident about 10 years back.
Wow, Dan, that's intriguing.
Yeah, like I spent 20 minutes trying to find this woman and talk to her, and she was never even there. Now, I'm pointing out that it was me and somebody else, my friend that I was having coffee with. He saw her too, and I told him, Rebecca, go check it out. And Rose knew who I was talking about, but she wasn't there. She could not have been there. She's dead.
So this person has been seen by multiple people there?
Yeah, at least one other person knew who I was talking about. Now, whether or not they've seen her, or if anybody else has seen her, I don't know. But she is known. And like I said, Rose laughed at me when I said I was trying to find her, and she knew exactly who I was looking for. So I would assume, it wasn't just me that night or in general, that had seen her. No.
Oh, well, being with your knowledge and the type of position that you have as in security, you would have a very keen eye for details on recognizing a person.
Well, yeah, that's the main thing. If we, our mandate is always to observe and report and call authorities or managers if we have something we can't handle. And I have my notebook. I take notes. I got a direct line to the supervisor. I have a partner working downstairs. So if anything, I had anybody to go to, and that's exactly what we do: observe and report. And the details are always critical. So, and like I said, the details of what she was wearing. Somebody knew exactly who I was talking about and showed me a photo of exactly who I was chasing. So,
So your keen eye brought you right to that picture. So when you looked at her in the picture, did you see any of the same identifying clothes or
Absolutely. She had on the brown shirt. It was only like a torso shot, a portrait, but she had the long black hair, the brown turtleneck. You could see the structure of her eyes, the position of her lips. It was absolutely her. And I did see her as she was, in the basement going towards the offices. I got a pretty good glimpse of, the back of her head and the side view of her face. So, again, now pointing out that there was nobody else down there, and she was pretty close on the mark of that photo.
and you had never seen that photo before?
No, because I didn't work the basement. Or the loading bay rather. I only went down the basement to do patrols on the night, through the offices to make sure that it actually was empty and there was nobody who needed help.
You
I had
know,
no other reason to be down there.
they do say that human spirits, if they don't know that they've passed on, being that it was such a traumatic incident that happened right there outside that facility, they say that those type of spirits tend to hang around because they don't know they've passed on. And they say also on the night shift or the graveyard shift, there's a certain lifting of the veil, they call it, which is the witching hour, where people or things from other dimensions, but people think that they can cross over easier onto this plane of reality, that so that we can sense them.
Whatever it may have been, it was easily the scariest thing I'd ever seen, and I stopped doing night shifts for a fair while after that.
I don't, I don't blame you. Yeah. Did they say in the picture or in the plaque or anything what year that the person had the incident?
Oh, I can't remember exactly what the date was, but from the day that I was there, I remember it was roughly 10 years before the night that I was working that shift, give or take.
Wow. That's really awesome stories, Dan. Thank you so much for sharing with us today. And for our listeners here on Paranormal NL, go ahead on over to the Facebook page and check us out. And if you would like to share your story, just message us on Messenger and you can get on your own Spotify audio podcast. And we really appreciate having Dan on here today. I'm sure a lot of people may have also seen this person. If you have seen this person, leave a few comments over on our Facebook page once we get this podcast up and running tonight. Thanks so much, Dan, for having you today.
And absolutely. Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much. You take care.
All right, you too. Take care.